We're at day 3, and in this lecture we're going to talk about research. So what is research and why do we do research? In academic writing, we have a specific kind of research, but in our everyday lives, we do more research than we probably think. So here are some questions that you might ask in your everyday life. Well, in Canada anyway. So here are some questions. If you know Michael Jackson, you might ask, why did Michael Jackson get so much surgery? So here is a why question. And we can look for reasons to why Michael Jackson has got so much plastic surgery. Number 2, I think this question is asked around the world. Any modern country, what's the best way to lose weight? So here's a what question, but here it's talking about the best way. So it is a how question, but it's a specific how question that's looking for the best way to lose weight. Notice that you may consider that there are different ways of losing weight. But we're trying to find the best one. Next question, how do teenagers consume social media in 2017? Well, this is a how question. And we consider what ways can they do that. So notice that question 2 and question 3, even though they talk about different ways, number 2 is asking for the best way, and number 3 is asking for the different ways. And specifically about how teenagers consume social media in a specific year, 2017. Let's look at number 4. What are the effects of genetically modified foods on our body? So genetically modified foods, another one word for it would be GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. So that's like creatures and plants. Things have to do with life that we eat. So it's asking for what? But specifically this time about the effects. So what effects does genetically modified foods have on our bodies? And the last one, what's the best way to teach math? Well, it can be anything. You might ask to learn English, improve grammar, improve writing, to pass this course. It's very similar to number 5. And notice we ask questions like this pretty much every day, and we're using the same questions, the 5 W's and 1 H, in academic writing as well. So we do this in everyday life, and then we do this for our academics too. So in this lecture, we're going to go over and help you do research in the academic way, starting with these questions along with some specific steps. So, with the invention of search engines like Google, your first response in this day and age is to Google your answer. So the question on this slide and what we're talking about now is whether you want to Google to search for the quick answer to the question. Now, Google is a search engine that finds results and sorts them. And you see these in different pages, and it's ranked by the most popular result. The most popular result would be first on Google. And then it ranks down. So it gets less popular as you go down the list. So nowadays, when you use Google, you type something and then you search whatever it is. Let's say, you want to research on research, and then Google has these results. 2, 3, and so on. And then most likely you just click on the first one. Click and read. And you might even use it in your research. Well, that's fine if you want to build what we're going to call a working knowledge. If you don't know anything at all about the topic, it's a good place to start here. But often what most people do, especially in everyday life, is this: they Google the answer and they stop. They know the answer, that's all they want, and that's it. But research is more than that. Research begins by asking the right questions. Based on a good working knowledge. So what you should do after Googling is to ask more questions, ask better questions. So that's when you can start using your 5 W's and the how. For example, I read about research. I look at the first one and I click it, I read it. And before you use it, you might start to ask, well, where is it from? Who is it written by? Why did they write this? How did it get on the top of the list? What other articles can I find that's related to it? So you can start asking these questions. And this relates to this quote here. What this group has found in this article. So this is the where, and this is the who, and this is the when, and this is what they're saying. They're saying overall, so it's like in general, young people, so that's you, and I like to say me, but I'm getting old now. The ability to reason, so that's to do with these questions here. About the information on the internet, so that's your Google. So that's reason, asking questions, thinking about the answer, so that's like analyzing answers. For example, can be summed up in one word: bleak. So bleak is not good. So you can check the dictionary for the meaning of this word. The meaning is not good. It's saying, this group is saying, in 2016, so that's only 2 years ago, that young people's ability to reason about what we find on the internet using Google, for example, is not good. We know how to Google. That's easy. Google's made it easy for us. But the skills to ask better questions, to think about the answers, that is not intuitive for us, and we need to learn that. Now, there are Google results for how to think critically. You can Google results for those too, but in this lecture, we're going to teach you the skills in asking the right questions. So let's move on. So besides the 5 W's and the H, another question you can ask, so a good question you can ask.
So you wanted to look at our psychology.
Number 1. You can ask about the source itself. So that's your
paper.
Who wrote it? Where is it written?
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I can just use this one.
Even how it's written.
Yeah.
So I'll make the questions a bit more specific. Who wrote it? Do we trust that person? So where is the source? Is it an academic source? Is it on the website? So, and then the next question could be, how did the author find the information? So here are some questions you could ask using these right here. The first good question we can ask about the research is the source itself.
Don't know why.
So it can be about the author, so that's the source, because it's the author's idea. But then it can also be the article itself that the author's written.
A citation test.
So you can ask about these things. First question is fact or fiction?
I think so.
So let's say it is the information. Notice I'm trying to avoid pronouns. The information true or accurate.
Yeah, it'll be after
So
that.
fact would be true and accurate.
With someone here.
Fiction would be not accurate, made up.
Like after 1 day?
Usually, yeah, we'll complete it in about a day.
Okay, so if you're unsure about what to believe, ask yourself these questions. Who is telling me this?
You'll get an email saying whether you passed.
How did they know it?
That got in your pass. And if you get in your
What's in it for them? So this is another question. Why did
review the test
the author or authors write it?
There we go. Sorry about that.
Write the article.
It's not doing what it should do.
Many researchers want to know. It's for knowledge. It's to help others. However, just as for contrast, some people write for money or for power. So asking good questions about the source and finding the answer to these questions can help you determine whether the source itself is accurate or true or not accurate. Now, I don't need to tell you you want accurate results for your sources if you want to support your point. So these are the types of evidence you're looking for in your research.
Yeah.
And this is good for your everyday life too, if you want to be sure of what to believe. Check your evidence.
Okay, great.
So the next time you Google the results, or we do research on the library website, check your evidence, ask these questions, and checking these sources will help you look for facts. So fact check is another word, and you can begin your analysis too this way.
Okay, so this is almost okay, but here, wait.
Okay, next question that you can ask in your term paper for your research is to think about what areas of study are you looking at. So these are very similar to the subjects you see in university. Well, universities do research and so do colleges too. So you see some familiar fields here. Education, you're in that right now. We are teaching you. Science may be something that you want to get into. Business is another thing, a business program. Social sciences, so for example, this might be psychology, sociology, studying people,
Microsoft Office agreement, but okay.
and
All right.
other fields too.
Okay, so this is going
Can
to
be
correct, like
engineering,
but you only need the author's last name.
forestry. UBC has that. And so on.
So you can erase that. And
All of these fields, no matter what they study, they want to find facts. They want to know about the world. You want to know about the world. So you look for evidence
sorry. Here we go.
to support their claims and explain what's going on in the world.
Yes.
Our surroundings. I'll just summarize it as the world. It can be
You can also just use these keys here.
can understand ourselves.
Okay, so that's good.
We can understand our society.
Okay. So
Businesses, you know,
that,
money.
teachers, unless
companies,
you have evidence to support those statements, your teacher is not
economy.
because they don't sound very
So
academic.
economics could be one too. So
Okay.
you get the
So,
picture. All of these fields that we
you have a
study
source
in
that says
are
that-
based on findings from research. So what you're
But
studying
if you don't have a source,
are
you
the
shouldn't say
facts. Even the skills we teach you in
It's kind of
English
like an opinion, and
are skills that
academic
work.
papers, your opinion is okay as long as you can support it by facts. Okay. So yeah, what's
So that's a fact too.
you
So
could say,
this quote
Susan
summarizes
recommended
why we
that
want to do research in any field.
and you could just leave it at that.
So why
And
do we
in
do
that
research
quote, if
in
you
university,
have,
let's
so just
say?
like I say, you include them in these things.
That's probably where you want to go into. If you cannot do research well,
Yeah.
or
so just
analyze,
get rid
evaluate
of it.
what others
It would be
find.
nice to have a citation for that fact as well. That
So
women
here it
succeed
says
more
you'll
often, but men complete more often.
you'll find yourself sidelined, which means
You could
taken
say
by
something
surprise, which
like,
means
men complete more often than women, suggesting that
you won't know what's
men
going
have
on.
different
You'll be ignorant
motivations or different, I don't know,
in a world that depends
conceptions of suicide.
on sound ideas. So again, that's
Like,
facts
suggestive, but it doesn't, like, say
based
something.
on good information.
So that's,
So that's
one idea.
evidence
You
produced
might
by
wanna
a
do
trustworthy
research,
inquiry.
like,
So
yeah.
that's research. and in our case, scientific research. And then present it clearly and accurately. And this is what we need, and what we're teaching you in this course, academic writing. So we read and write. Before we write, we think about what we're writing, think about what we're reading, and then we write it. In every field, we have academic writing. In every field, we try to do scientific research. In every field, we find and gather and analyze evidence.
And then it's APAs.
In every field, we look for facts to explain the world we live in.
If you quoted any of this, then you would do
whatever study you want to do in the future, this course will help you a lot. Will give you the research skills you need. Skills that work.
For myself, it's a placeholder, and then I can search for it in the document. It's easy to fix it. And if there's two different people, replace both people.
So, having looked at the different fields of research, next thing you want to consider is who is reading it. Who reads the research? In your case, who will read your research?
So do you know what source?
So think about your audience. Consider it. The different audience types of people you write to, the different writing you would use. If you're writing to your classmates, you'll use a different style than writing to your teacher. And if you keep advancing, let's say you graduate and you work in the field that you want, maybe business, maybe psychology, maybe the sciences. Each of these will have a different style of writing, a different audience. Again, the general public would be different. You can think of newspapers, magazines,
Okay, so I'm a little worried about this citation too, because Emil Durkheim wrote about
websites.
I think
So writing to
maybe earlier than
the general public, a large group of people, is going to be different from classmates. It's going to be different from your teacher. It's going to be different from your colleagues, co-workers. It's going to be different.
To see that source, 'cause Emil Durkheim is one
And a specific field is
and
like the discipline you're
the citation
writing
is
for,
really out of date. Like the significant thing about
but you may specialize in
Emil
something.
Durkheim is that he was the first person to use statistics to write about suicide and suggest
For example, we learned this word, entomology. If you remember, that's the study of insects.
Well, I don't think that this is the study that provides these.
Now,
updated
it's a science
statistics. It
field.
seems fairly up to date.
However, it's a specific science field that talks about insects, so it would have its own vocabulary.
Yeah,
It would
you
have
need
its
a-
own
you need a
terms
different citation here. Should I just maybe I should
that probably other entomologists
yeah.
would
This
understand.
is a very famous name, so your teacher would write like,
So if you,
no,
let's
this
say
is
you're
the
writing
person
about
who
insects
because he's dead already.
to
If you want to
your
mention him,
other entomologists, you can use specific vocabularies and terms, but if you're writing to the general public about the same subject, about bugs, you might use different words.
Okay, so
You use
that's
different or
yeah,
easier or more
you can stick it
common
in there a little bit, but yeah.
vocabulary. And then you have to explain it too
Capital J, is that somebody's last name?
for your audience.
Instructors are
Now, no matter which audience you're writing, when you consider the audience, the idea is to be clear and concise so that the audience will understand what you're trying to say. So let's look at this example. So I would ask you, which of these paragraph
Is that also from this study by Johnny? Okay.
do you understand better? So you can take a moment to pause the video, and I'm just going to read these aloud as well. Paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. I'll read it slowly. See if you understand more words in one paragraph than the other. And try paragraph 1. The control of cardiac irregularity by calcium blockers depends on calcium's activation of muscle groups through its interaction with the regulatory proteins actin, myosin, tropomyosin, and troponin in the sarcomere. That was paragraph 1. Let's try paragraph 2. Doctors can control irregular heartbeats with the drugs called calcium blockers. When the heart contracts, its muscles are activated by calcium. The calcium is in the heart muscle cell interacts with 4 proteins that regulate contraction. The proteins are actin, myosin, tropomyosin, and troponin. The interaction happens in the basic unit of muscle contraction, the sarcomere. Now, what differences do you see in these two paragraphs? Sure, this one is shorter. This one is longer. You do see the same words that's mentioned. So you have actin, myosin, tropomyosin, troponin.
It will appear on every single page. Actually, I did a little bit.
You have proteins, that's the same. This word is regulatory. But we have regulate contraction. You have interaction, that's the same, but here it's used interact.
Here we go. And then so you wanted a top page.
Yeah, but the interaction is taking place in the calcium in the heart muscle cell. Cardiac irregularity, so that one's different. Irregular heartbeats. Calcium blockers, so that's the same. However, we see that in this second paragraph, the calcium blockers is a drug. And here we see who is controlling the cardiac irregularity or irregular heartbeats? Doctors. Control. Even though this is the verb form of
so that's going to be on the top of every page.
Control here. And we have calcium's activation. Here we have a whole sentence explaining this calcium activation. When the heart contracts, its muscles are activated by calcium. And then the calcium interacts with the 4 proteins. Here we know there are 4 proteins. In this paragraph, we just read the proteins out loud. And then we have another final sentence here that explains this word, sarcomere. So the basic unit of muscle contraction is called the sarcomere. So take a look at this again. The shorter one is probably written for a specific field.
That's all blocked.
It's probably heart doctors. This one, it may be written for students
Different first page.
or
Because
even the public,
running head suicide, right? So you
because it explains the technical terms, or it provides, it gives definitions,
So if you press this button, you will see that this line is like
and
you need to know about that.
explains concepts.
On and you're trying to type your password, it won't accept your password.
The first paragraph assumes you know this, so it assumes the reader already know. They already know the terms.
The only problem is I don't think we get paid if we are not here. So,
They already know the terms. They already know the definitions.
Yesterday, I mean, we've all put in our timesheets already.
And they probably already know the concepts as well.
And you're supposed to, we're supposed to adjust.
So this paragraph
Next one. Put in mind this
is probably a research finding
Okay.
stress pay.
It's just, yeah.
for other researchers.
I had to do some heavy lifting, well, of computers. So,
Other doctors in this case,
Handling electricity and water.
if they want to fix a heart problem.
and then I think we did this already. And then you can adjust.
For paragraph 2,
Okay. You can adjust.
maybe it's to teach future doctors.
So you've got that. in
Maybe
your
you.
book, and you've obviously followed it pretty well.
Or to tell others, or to tell the public,
like a little bit more space
show the
about it.
public.
I think it's like a third of the way down, so you can adjust that later. Okay, so now you'll see
how
that
doctors
the page number will
fix heart problems, fix hearts.
You'll see each page is already done.
So here we have an example of how different ways of writing.
Citations there.
This is
Like I said,
concise,
about Durkheim, you could say, well, remember that really influential study, but maybe near the beginning or something.
shorter,
Okay.
and clear, using more words to explain things, is written for different people, whether it's for other doctors or for students and the general public. If a doctor is writing to another doctor, the writer can assume that the other doctor would already know terms and definitions and concepts, so they focus on the research finding. But if a doctor is writing to students and other people in the public, the doctor would need to explain the terms, give the definitions, and explain the concepts. Maybe to teach future doctors or to show the public how doctors do things.
Like what you're supposed to do for this assignment?
When you are looking for articles,
Do you have like
as well as when you're trying to write, you need to consider the
audience.
audience.
Teacher? In Canvas?
As a reader,
Look on here if you want.
you probably want to find articles that explain concepts if you don't know it. If you don't know the field, if you don't know the topic.
The library password?
So
Okay.
articles like paragraph 2
Okay, we'll fix that. But first let's look at this.
would help you learn about the topic. Build your working knowledge. So you would know the terms, you would know the definitions, you would know the concepts. And then, after you learn about the topic, then you look into research findings. which is why we have introduction courses. So think of this one would be let's say for example, I'll use the right subject here. Let's say medicine, for example. Let's say this would be not even medicine. This might be, let's say, bio. Something like that.
It is under syllabus, so what else maybe?
This would be the equivalent of, let's say, Bio 101. And then this one
Okay, so this is the term paper assignment.
would
And I see they've got a sample
be in med school.
and that can be really useful to look at that.
So like graduate school. And this one would be like your first year
Doing a literature review.
university. So as a reader, you want to start here. Start here. And once you understand enough, then you can move towards articles like this. So I'll actually point the arrow this way, start here. What happens is when you find research and when you look at articles, you might end up looking for these, finding these.
Okay, so this gives you quite detailed instructions.
But if you find an article that you don't understand, look for,
Yeah, a lot of people don't read the instructions. It's always a good idea to read them. Okay.
look for textbooks,
So an abstract.
look for longer articles that explain concepts.
No.
So all of this is to build your working knowledge. And we'll explain that in the next slide.
Or up here for a little bit and then maybe work from home.
So
They're just trying to assess like
your next assignment coming up for the rest of the course is to do a research paper. So you might get an instruction like this.
well they need to for the drywall.
Write a 1,500 or 1,500 word research paper on any topic. Now, when most students read this for the first time, they read it forwards. Yes, well, you need to write it. That's your verb. Yes, you need to write what? Well, you need to write a 150 word research paper, and it's going to be on a topic of your choice. However, a lot of students end up, oh, I need to write this many words. Oh, well, I have I need to do an outline. Oh, I have my intro. I have my body paragraphs. I have my conclusion.
This mostly tells you about your
But
format.
if you start writing right away, you have no knowledge about the topic, really. Even though you think you do, but for a research paper, the idea is that you need to do research on a topic of your choice. So what we're teaching you in today's lecture and what you're going to be doing for the rest of the course, before you write the paper, we must research. We must do research. Now, we do write in research, but we're not writing the paper. So we're writing down
Okay, so basically,
what we learn. Write down
like an essay
our questions,
about a certain topic, but you're basically just using.
write down our facts,
Okay.
write down our thoughts, our analyses.
To the library sources.
Okay, so it's almost like working backwards. You start with a topic. And then you research that topic.
So you quickly see library, I guess.
And then you do your brainstorming. You do your outline. You write your drafts. And then you would have your 1,500 word essay. So yes, you read it forwards, but if you see an instruction like this, you start with the research. Go back, let's start with the topic first. On the topic. Build your knowledge. Do your research. Build your knowledge. By doing your research. Then you would have stuff to write about. Then start writing.
The internet is not very fast. Okay, there we go.
So, we'll end the first part here with the steps in research. So remember, we want to focus on the research first, on the topic of your choice. So there are 6 steps here and 5 steps are listed that you have to do before you write. All of these happen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before you write. Then you have something to write about. First, gain a working knowledge of the topic. So this is where you do your initial information gathering.
Yeah.
You can start with Google, but then we also have our library, our online library where we have articles and things that you can read.
What you're supposed to do here is you need to get articles. So research articles.
Remember, there are 2 types of articles that we looked at in the example. We have sort of introductory articles.
Other scholars looked at them and said
So we have definitions,
to be published.
you have terms, you have concepts to help you learn about the topic, and then you have research articles.
You really want to.
So these are your
Publication date here.
studies, your findings
You can get, emails or
that
is always going to be
support certain claims that they make. You want to read the introductory articles first before reading the research. Build your working knowledge. Learn what the researchers are studying about. They will be using the definitions, terms, and concepts in their research to make new claims and support their claims with findings in these studies. Next, once you've built a working knowledge about the field or subject, and then the research that they do, then you start asking a research question about the studies.
Okay. And then when you type your last name, if you have a last name, you type your last name.
Remember,
If you
in order to focus and find a problem to solve, you need to know the general things first. So 1 here, those are the general knowledge.
Yeah, it will work. Okay, let's just try a couple other things here. If you want to put your student number again.
And then you have your specific knowledge. Your research question will be focused on the specific knowledge. So, for example, when we asked you in assignment 2
Alright, so you gotta see
about whether you agree or disagree with the article,
but what we can do now is
because we wanted your opinion and wanted to test your skills, you probably answered, most of you did, you agreed or disagreed based on general knowledge. But for assignment 3, your research paper,
And
when you research
to yourself. So
and you argue about the research, you're going to be using specific knowledge. So if you have cited the source that you're using in assignment 2, good, you get marks for that. You're supposed to cite the article that you're using.
yeah, so do you have the APA guide?
In assignment 3 to 5,
I'll just grab you one of those.
you're going to be looking for the right sources to
There's a couple
cite
things that will help you here. First of all,
in your specific knowledge,
there, and then this one here.
which
is the
leads
second
to
one. So if
number
you fix
3.
that,
Number 3 would be gathering the sources that you would
a little bit
cite
of time.
for assignment 3 to 5.
APA,
And then when you look at the sources,
simply
you would evaluate them,
some of the
ask
citations are
specific questions.
and some of them are really not very they're missing a lot of information. So, you know, what you can
Ask
do,
those questions
or you can put it
on
in,
how good are they,
and I think
what,
you said you already have this.
how do they support your claim or the research, and is it related to the research?
What I would do then, since you've already got your
Next, you
paper,
organize that information to answer the research question. So this would be your brainstorming process. Look at all the sources that you find that are relevant
okay. So then
and brainstorm
and I copied it already. And
answers to that question and choose the best answer.
Control data.
And then you would begin your writing process.
Format that. So back to this page here.
So for this lecture, we're going to focus on steps 1 and 2 first.
Press that and follow the instructions. You'll get the whole article in your inbox. And that will be really important.
This will be our last slide for part 1. We'll focus on steps 1 and 2 in our research first. Doing the research. The reason we're doing this lecture early is to give you a head start for your research essay that's due at the end of the course. We have only 6 weeks, so at least you have 2 to 3 weeks to do it.
I love it because it's so easy. It's just
So remember, the first step is to gain a working knowledge on the topic.
go back to the result list.
And step 2 is to develop a research question on the topic. Without the working knowledge,
Are there any sources that you've listed that you
if you don't know about the topic, you won't be able to ask the right question. So, to sum up, learn
the one that one of the
about
ones that
the topic.
is that one of the ones you used already?
Read
Okay.
general and specific articles. General first, then specific. Learn about the topic. Then, once you've learned the topic, ask good questions. So it's who, what, when, where, why, and how, and then you choose
I think the library
the best
order
question.
is kind of down to if you get your
In the next part of the lecture, we'll give you an example of this process in terms of the steps, so stay tuned for that.
It's possible. No, but